Hello everyone. I want to talk to you today about a subject that is a lot more serious than any subject I've addressed on my videos before or in my blog, and that is how I have dealt with the physical effects of aging and what prompted me to so radically change the way I ate. The reason I wanted to do this video sort of sprang from a conversation I had with my husband a couple of days ago. I just had my 57th birthday, and it dawned on me that I am now the age my mother was when I first moved to Naples, Florida in 1984. She was 57, I was 24 years old. My father was alive and healthy, my mother was healthy, and I thought, where did the time go? Where did the time go? My mother is now 91. In November, she'll be 91. And it reaffirmed for me, and I was saying to my husband how important it is that we make the most of the rest of our lives together. That we do all we can to take care of our health, that he does all he can to take care of his health, so we have many more years together, and joyful years. So after we had that conversation, excuse me, I started thinking about, when did I start noticing all these changes? When did I start becoming aware that I was aging? I know we're always aging, excuse me, from the moment we're born, but when did I start really noticing it? And the age that comes to my mind is 50. 50 was it. That was 7 years ago. I remember as I was approaching 50, I was bothered for the first time. 50 sounded old. I remember getting a letter from AARP, which is the American Association of Retired People, and I thought, why are you sending me this? I am not an old person. Only old people belong to AARP. So the other thing that was happening as I was approaching 50 were all these changes in my body. Changes I'd never seen before. For the first time in my life, I now had cellulite on my thighs. I now had droopier skin than ever. I mean, everything was droopy. I mean, I've never had a really tight face. I've always sort of thought I kind of had a hound dog face when I was a child. I even thought that, but now it's even more droopy. Along with other things, I'm about the same weight I was in high school, but I noticed that I didn't have the same proportions. My top was a lot skinnier and my bottom was a lot bigger. So all these things that I never, oh, you know the one that really got me? I remember seeing a wrinkle in front of a person's ear who was older, and I thought, oh, that's not going to happen, is it? To me, that must just be on that person. Well, I noticed the wrinkle in front of the ear. I'd never heard of anybody talk about this wrinkle in front of the ear, but I noticed it on that person, and I noticed 10 years later now I had it. That seemed to bother me more than anything. I don't know why. But a big thing that happened that probably bothered me the most, I would say, is I got contact lenses, and I am nearsighted. And so whenever I would go out at night, I wouldn't wear my glasses because I only wear my glasses for driving and watching television or at the movie theater. So when I was out at night, if we ran into someone I knew, if they were sort of walking towards me, I wouldn't be able to see them until they got up close to me. So I decided I should probably wear contacts. So one day I was leaving the dining room at my parents' country club, and we were walking down a hallway, and the hallway turned, and there was a chest of drawers with a mirror above it. And I caught sight of myself in this mirror as I was going around, and I was mortified because it was the first time I saw myself under overhead lighting, and I saw that I had bags under my eyes, something that only old people have. And I thought, when did I get bags under my eyes? I was born with dark circles under my eyes, but when did they turn to bags? That's what I wanted to know. That was depressing. So depressing. So all these things were surrounding my 50th birthday. On top of it, my health was not good. I had been diagnosed with asthma at the age of 28, and it was much worse by now. By 50, I had been hospitalized 4 times. I'd had to go to the emergency room twice in the middle of the night, 2 times in the afternoon. 2 times I had to do it alone because I couldn't breathe. And my fast-acting inhaler didn't work. I would always carry with me albuterol. It didn't work. So that's terrifying. And every time I got a cold, I was horrified I was going to end up with the cold getting worse and getting bronchitis, and then I would be in the hospital. So, but by now I also had all these symptoms of rashes. I had symptoms of IC, or interstitial cystitis. So things were not good on the health front. I was doing a lot to work on my mental health and my spiritual health, and I thought I was doing everything I needed to do for my physical health, but nobody seemed to tell me how to heal those issues. I exercised. I had begun exercising 3 times a week when I was 45. I walked 3 times a week. So between the ages of 50 and 52, I struggled with all of this. And then one night in April of 2012, I woke up with a massive chest ache. I knew instinctively it wasn't a heart attack because my mother had had the same thing happen to her, and they had rushed her to the hospital in the middle of the night thinking she had a heart attack, and it was acid reflux. My older brother also had issues with acid reflux, so I thought, oh my gosh, that's what that is. It's got to be what that is. And that lasted for hours that night. I woke up the next morning, I still had the pain. It lasted for days. So I started Googling acid reflux, chest pain, heartburn, just kept searching. You know, I had searched for years trying to heal the other issues, but now I was just focusing on the heartburn because the pain was so intense. And I came across information on something called the gut and psychology diet, or GAPS. And there was a lot of information there about how the health of the gut, or the GI tract, influences the health of the brain and the rest of the body. And I immediately ordered the book. It just rung true to me. I'll tell you why. This is when I stopped and was stunned, and for the first time since I was 28, had hope. This doctor listed all of my chronic symptoms as all being linked to an unhealthy gut. So not only the heartburn, but the IC symptoms, the rashes, whether they were, what are all the different, I can't think of the names. I never got mine diagnosed. My doctor used to just give me steroid creams. And of course the asthma. Oh, emphysema, eczema, and what's the other one? The one I think I had was eczema. So I ordered the book, but I immediately decided to make changes in my life, because not only did she talk about, this doctor, she's a physician in England. She talked about food influencing the health of your gut, but also your environment and what you put on your skin, put on your hair. So then and there, I decided to make some big changes. I ordered the book, and I phased in the changes. The immediate thing I did was change my diet. Now, before I go into that, I just want to talk about what happened when I shifted my focus suddenly out of really self-preservation. My focus had shifted from the mirror and what I was seeing, you know, in appearance, to what I couldn't see, which was what was happening inside and my health, my physical health. So without even realizing what was happening, I had shifted my whole focus to my health. And anymore, I didn't think about what I look like. I just wanted to get healthy. I was terrified. By now, my asthma was so bad, I was constantly having to use an inhaler. If my mother-in-law had cats, and I would be in her house, you know, for 2 hours, and I would be having severe symptoms of asthma and having to use my inhaler. And at the time, we had kitties, we had a dog. but you know, just piling on more, and I got sicker. So I phased in the changes, but what happened is I stopped worrying about the way I looked and became focused on my health, and that has made all the difference. I started seeing improvement. I'll get into what I changed in terms of my diet in a bit, but I want to tell you what it did to me mentally. Because I started seeing changes, I got hope. 5 months, was it about 5? No, maybe 9 months. Within a year of starting the diet, I was with my mother-in-law for a week, staying in her house. I never had to use the inhaler once. So that was one big major positive shift for me. It was I stopped focusing on the way I look. Yes, to this day, I still want to look my best possible, but I don't focus on the imperfections, the physical outward imperfections like I did before, because I'm more concerned about my health and growing older in the most healthy possible way. I was so chronically sick, I was depressed, I was unhappy. That brings me to another point. During that 2 years between 50 and 52, when I got the heartburn and all the changes happened, my husband and I were at a restaurant, and we saw a woman that I hadn't seen in decades. But she was my age, she was also blonde, and I had always thought she was a very attractive woman. When I was younger, and even now, she was very pretty. And I said to my husband, "Do you think she's attractive?" And you know, this was at the time when I was so unhappy with my looks and all the changes, and he turned to me and he looked at me and he said, "Yes, because she's happy." That struck a chord with me. I was so unhappy. I had grown unhappy because of all the changes happening and the health issues. And so when I started this change in my diet and the other things I'll tell you about, I was suddenly seeing improvement in my health, and I was so grateful. I was joyful. I was hopeful. There was a chance that I could get rid of all these symptoms. The first one that I saw disappear was the heartburn. And I have to say, although it's called the perfect health diet or the gut and psychology diet, it's not a diet. It's a way of life, and it's a way of eating. So what did I do? What did I phase in? I was already off of soy. I had been off of soy for years because I knew it played havoc with your hormones, and I didn't like that. So the diet says to go off of grains, sugar, sweeteners, soy, dairy in some cases. So I decided to immediately switch to fermented dairy because that was okay on the diet. Fermented dairy and raw and organic when you can. So I started buying only organic foods. That first week, I was off of all grains and all sugar, all soy, and just the fermented dairy and some cheese. But I allowed myself to eat one cookie this big a week for 2 weeks, and it was a raw oat and agave nectar cookie that I got at our health food store. And I broke that up into 4 pieces, and I did one a week. And after that second week, I knew I would never again have sugar, a cookie or cake or ice cream. That's what I was worried about. I couldn't imagine giving up desserts and candy and cookie. I had always been a dessert eater. I had always loved chocolate and cake, and I didn't imagine I could ever give it up, but I did. I will say that about 15 years earlier, I had tried to give up sugar because my husband had suggested it. He had never been a sugar eater. And I tried, but I just couldn't do it. But I did end up cutting back. So was it 10 years? Maybe it was 10 years earlier. So I had, by the time this all happened, cut back on sugar. So that's the first thing I did, was I changed my diet. Went off those foods. Then after the second week, I was off of even those oat and agave nectar cookies. So no soy, no sugar or sweeteners, no grains. I was still doing dairy. Eventually, within a couple of weeks or months, I came across the Perfect Health Diet. What I found I missed the most was bread, grains. I missed pizza. I missed hamburgers, sandwiches, hot dogs. I missed those very much. I didn't miss sugar, dessert so much. So the Perfect Health Diet, as well as Grain Brain, a book I read later, it hadn't come out yet, they allow you to have some rice because it's the least, I guess, unhealthy of grains. So I allowed myself to have sprouted rice. In this case, it was sprouted brown rice. I found some in our local Whole Food store. So you're probably asking, well, why no grains? You've probably heard whole grains are supposed to be very healthy. And what about sprouted whole grains and organic sprouted whole grains? There is controversy over this, but everything I've been reading, the new science is saying it's a good idea to give up grains, especially gluten-containing grains, if you've got the kinds of issues I have. My feeling was I didn't know if it would help, but I was desperate and I knew I was going to be eating a lot more of the other very healthy foods like vegetables, whole fruits, nuts, which I sprout. So let me tell you what I read is not healthy about them. Grains, whether they're whole grains or refined grains, they spike your blood sugar. When you spike your blood sugar, it causes inflammation in the body. Inflammation in the body is what leads to chronic disease, as well as diseases like cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. Grains have anti-nutrients, which make it difficult for the gut to digest them, so it causes stress on the GI tract. These anti-nutrients also inhibit the ability for the GI tract to absorb the nutrients from the grains. Well, what about sprouting grains? They say if you sprout the grains, then it eliminates the problems of the anti-nutrients. That's true, but it doesn't stop the fact that they still spike your blood sugar levels. The other thing that people say is, well, I'm not allergic to gluten. I don't have gluten intolerance. What they found is some people with rheumatoid arthritis, for example, who didn't test allergic to gluten or intolerant of gluten, when they removed gluten-containing grains from their diet, their symptoms improved. So because grains do all these things, they spike my blood sugar levels, they have anti-nutrients. If you remove them, some people with chronic illnesses, their symptoms go away, even if you are not allergic to the gluten in some grains or intolerant. So it's just, there was so much evidence. For me, I gave them up. Okay, so I've given up sugar, I've given up soy, I'm only having rice. How often do I have rice? I only have it at most twice a week, one serving twice a week, and often I don't have it at all. I can go weeks and months without having rice. I really only have it when I'm just craving maybe having a cracker, a rice cracker with organic, all-natural lunch meat, or old-fashioned rice. That's when I have it. Usually I don't even have it. I've found some lentil pasta, organic lentil pasta, which is really great. I even limit that just because it is a processed food. But what else did I do? Everything I was reading talked about everything you put on your skin affects your gut also. So that's when I started making the drastic changes to what I put on my body, my hair, my face, my body. I started moisturizing only with coconut oil from the neck down. At that time I wasn't ready to change too drastically in terms of moisturizer for my face because I still had the idea that oil on my face would break me out. That's what I'd learned when I was younger. I still thought it was the case. Well, so I just switched to a healthier soap. I found Kiss My Face olive oil soap. It wasn't organic, but that's what I started with. And I found some organic moisturizers. I think it was My Essence I was using back then in 2012. As for my hair, I was already had started thinking about stopping the coloring. At that point, I was highlighting my hair because the gray had started coming in, and I didn't want to color it. I didn't want to low light it, but I liked highlighting it. But it used to dry it out so much, I thought, I'm going to go off of that too. So I'm trying to think, is that about the time? Yes. So it was the same time I stopped coloring my hair. So I think that's about it. Makeup. In the last couple of years, I found some all-natural, organic, or both brands of makeup. The Gabrielle, Zuzu Luxe, and 100% Pure, and more recently, Colorganics lipsticks. So I was thrilled to find those. So those are the changes I made, and I kept seeing progress. Well, then in the spring following that April, so go through 2012 into 2013, that following spring, I entered perimenopause. I had never had a problem with my period. I'd always gotten my period every month, ever since the age of 13. So for the first time in that March of 2013, I didn't get my period. And then I did get it. And then I didn't get it. So that happened for a year and a half. And starting in October of 2014, I stopped having a period and I never got it again. So I would say October 2014 is when I officially went into menopause, and guess what? A lot of symptoms came back, or came back and worse, or I got new symptoms. So this was a whole new host of issues. I had been doing well, I will say, well, let me back up. I had seen a lot of improvement in my asthma and then the interstitial cystitis symptoms, but the rashes, although they were about 70% better, I think it was eczema, it was still there. And sometimes it would flare up and be worse. And it was much worse starting with the menopause. I suddenly had something like eczema on my face. In fact, even up to 2 years ago when I started this YouTube channel and my blog, I had the eczema in my hairline, in my eyebrows. Luckily, makeup and lots of moisturizer helped to minimize it. But so that was when 2 years ago, by 2 years ago, when it had the eczema was worse, getting worse again, I decided to go off of all dairy whatsoever, all dairy. So as of 2 years ago, I am completely dairy-free, and I would say the eczema did subside. I'm probably now 90% better. I say 90 because once in a while, I think through stress, I will get some itching back, but maybe I'm 95% better. It's so markedly better that it's been worth it. So that's the changes I've made. And because I can keep focusing on my health and doing all I can to be healthy and focusing on cooking healthily for my husband, we eat at home a lot more than we used to. We still go out, but I'm careful what I order. You all who see me go out to lunch, you see I order salads. I talk to the waiter before I order to make sure all these things aren't in the salad. I've been so surprised to find out some of these ingredients are in things that I didn't know they would be. So how I handle the effects of aging was through focusing on my physical health. Some of the other changes they also suggested I make was probiotics. So I introduced probiotics early on in my diet. Also, as for the heartburn, something that was probably very controversial, and I did it because my instinct said it's the right thing to do, was to take a hydrochloric acid supplement. And what that does is actually stir up and get your acids going. And I only had to do it for a short time. I think it was maybe 10 days. I just followed the directions in the book. And also on the bottle. I was out of the country at the time, so I bought whatever was available then. You can find lots of options. So I ate all the foods that I'd always eaten, just more vegetables and more fruits. and organic when I was at home. With nuts, I sprout my nuts, or I buy them sprouted now. I stopped sprouting because it's really time consuming, and I buy it only organic. I try to buy only low omega-6 nuts like walnuts and macadamias, because you want to make sure your balance between omega-3s and omega-6 is a healthy balance. We tend to get a lot of omega-6 in vegetable oils, so that's why I buy low omega-6 nuts. I also eat a lot of fish, wild-caught salmon and sardines. I have sardines every day in my salad at home. My husband too, when he eats lunch at home. Eat grass-fed beef, organic, free-range chickens, free-range chicken eggs. Just a really healthy, balanced diet. I do eat potatoes, although they're not on the GAPS diet. They are in the Perfect Health diet. So I eat those at most twice a week. Again, being careful. I do eat sweet potatoes, squash, so it's a very healthy way of eating. I only drink red wine maybe twice a week at the most. I drink green tea when I'm out. Occasionally, if it's a special occasion, I'll have black tea, but I don't put a sweetener. And I'm telling you, it was challenging at first, but I, especially being such a junk food eater and sweet eater, but you know, back when I was in my 20s, I was also a smoker. I used to smoke about 1 3/4 packs of cigarettes a day. So that was difficult to give up, but I managed to give that up. So I knew I had the ability in me, and I had reached bottom. I had to do something. And I'll tell you, making this change in my life to focus on mental, physical, and spiritual health, that's made all the difference. Yes, the changes with aging are going to keep happening, but I'm able to accept them. I look at them in a different way. I'm grateful to be alive. I had a partner in business who lived until she was 39. She never got to see her kids grow up. So I've had many more years. I'm lucky to be 57. We're lucky to grow old. And it's just about accepting the changes. Now, you know, I support other people who want to have cosmetic procedures like Botox and the other injections and the facelifts and the neck lifts and everything. It's just not for me. But I do worry about Botox, the effects it has. It is a toxin. I'm trying not to put toxins on, let alone injecting them near my brain. So that's why I don't want to do that. And you young girls, I hope you'll reconsider doing it. I know that's being promoted as a way to prevent wrinkles, but stay out of the sun. That's the other thing. My mother had taught me to use sunscreen as a young person, so I did use sunscreen. I didn't know to reapply it, so we used to go swimming and it'd all wash off. But I did stop sunbathing at the age of 30. So now what I do, I haven't been doing it enough, but I do try to get a little bit of sun on my body, about 15 to 20 minutes occasionally during the week, but I always wear a hat. I've stopped wearing sunscreen on my face because of the chemicals, and I don't wear sunscreen on my body unless I'm going to be on the beach for maybe an hour or more. Then I wear an organic-based sunscreen. So that's about all I do, and I wear light makeup. A lot of people are dealing with the aging by putting on more makeup, and it doesn't work for me. It only emphasizes wrinkles, so I use a lot of moisturizer. That's the other thing. I switched. In the last couple of years, my skin started getting drier, so I experimented with oil. I decided to try it. I thought if I break out, I just won't do it again. And I decided to try to clean my face with coconut oil, hot water, and a washcloth. And my skin actually felt great. And the next day, I didn't break out. In fact, my skin was conditioned. I didn't need as much moisturizer. So actually now, I only use soap and water when I wear makeup. So I will wash my face with soap, dry it, and then I apply coconut oil. And that works for me. And if I have more time, I'll actually wash my face with soap, then I'll apply the coconut oil and I'll remove it. Because the removing process actually is a great way to exfoliate with a washcloth. I know the other thing I wanted to really mention again is the importance of joy. What my husband said about that woman, that the reason she looked attractive was she was happy. And joy for me comes from gratitude, the kind that's the sustaining kind of joy. It's not based on external factors. It's based on being really grateful for what I have, for the love of my husband, for my friends, for my mom still being alive, for all of you being so supportive, for so many things. So when I focus on those things and not on the negatives, it really helps to lighten my life and shift the focus away from worrying about all the icky things that may be happening because I'm getting older. If you've got any comments or questions or you want to add to this conversation, I would love for you to leave your feelings in the comments section here at YouTube or on my blog or on Instagram or Facebook. I'm sure you all have lots to say about it yourselves or how you're handling it or what you're doing. You know, everybody handles it differently. I'm not saying everybody should do this diet and grow their hair long and stop coloring it or stop, you know, don't do facial injections or plastic surgery. We all have to find what works for us. This just happened to be what worked for me, what's helping me deal with all the changes. So if I'll put information about these books and everything I've talked about on my blog, and that link will be down below, and I'll say, I don't know, it'll say more information on my blog or something like that. See my blog for more, something like that. I'll write it here on the screen when I figure out what I'm going to say. But I hoped I gave you some information that you were interested in knowing about. I'm sure this video is really long. I thank you for watching it all the way through if you have gotten to this point. And I will talk to you in my next video. Bye.